Hi there, in this video I'm going to go through some of the early levels of the double leg stretch modified Pilates exercise. Now, like lots of the exercises I specialise in, the origins of them hark back to the classical Pilates repertoire. And the double leg stretch is one of those very difficult exercises. It needs loads of abdominal strength. It's a dynamic movement, quite a ballistic movement like lots of those classical patterns. For many people, particularly those recovering from injury or who are new to the methods, that's going to be relatively unachievable for quite a long time. It needs a lot of assurity to perform those ones. So this starts off at a very basic level, but still needs quite a lot of control. Remembering Pilates used to be called contrology, and therefore you should try and elicit that control all the time. It also gets a bit of multitasking, upper and lower body, while aiming to keep that neutral lumbo-pelvic position intact. So again, it's a little bit more challenging than some people give it credit for, and as with the way I teach my clients, you really want to start off at that base level, make sure that's really foolproof and bomb-proof, and then move through once you're happy that those levels are performed well. And that will give you that extra confidence and security once you get to those more advanced levels, and that kind of peace of mind that the basic foundations of your movement sequences are really strong. And of course, for those of you who've suffered from or continue to have low back pain or chronic conditions, or have that extensive deconditioning of particularly those lower abdominal canister core stabilizing muscles, this is a fantastic level where you're exercising on that gentle but very effective level to reinstill some of that control and reawaken some of those pathways which maybe have gone a little bit dormant over the years. So we'll be performing this exercise from the rest position, which is supine, knees bent, feet flat. If you haven't had a look at my video on that, I've done one which is just worth having a look at so you're happy with the basic setup and comfort and core muscle activation, etc. So take a look at that if you haven't seen it already. Otherwise, I'll see you down on the mat in just a moment and we'll go through these early levels of the double leg stretch. So let's begin the tutorial now. It's not an effort to confuse, but more of a kind of continuity to take from the classical repertoire into the new. The double leg stretch, the early levels, which I would teach, don't actually involve double leg movements at all. The first one is actually being correct with your arm movement. So that's what we're going to focus on to start with. From your rest position, deep abdominal muscles and pelvic floor and abdominal canister engaged to that optimal 3 out of 10 level. We're going to bring the arms up somewhere above our torso. Now, that position in and of itself can be challenging, particularly if there's shoulder complaints which prevent significant movement overhead. So a lot of people will feel more comfortable starting with the hands over their stomach somewhere. Imagine you're holding a beach ball between your hands, so your palms are facing one another. And we're going to keep the lower body beautifully still as we take our arms somewhere comfortably overhead, and then draw 2 opposite semicircles to bring us back to the start. And there's our arm circle component. Now, one thing I try and teach people is not to lose sight of the hands in the periphery of your vision. So as you go down, keep looking straight up, but you should be able to see those hands all the way through. Lots of people will be very mobile in their shoulders and will actually be able to take those hands down and to sweep them across the floor. But really that's just promoting laxity in the shoulder complex. And in terms of the scapular plane or the shoulder plane, it would always be above horizontal in this context. So therefore, if you keep those hands where you can see them, you're going to get a really nice, efficient shoulder movement. Now you can reach a bit further overhead if your shoulders allow, but as long as you keep those hands in your visual field, you won't be going far wrong. So then we get on to the element of breathing. Now really, I'm not too concerned which way around it goes. I would more promote taking either the up or the return movement on one part of your breath. To me, it always feels more natural to breathe in as those arms come overhead and breathe out to return. But if the opposite works for you, that's fine, because the next level brings in our leg movement, and that's where you can really hone this to your own particulars. Now this lends lends itself very nicely to the Pilates modified one leg stretch, which I've taught in another video. And that's what we're going to do now, combine upper and lower body. So we bring our arms to the start position. And this time, as the arms go overhead, the leg slides along the mat without lifting. And then when both are ready to return, we do just that. The only change for the next repetition is the opposite leg comes into motion. Good. So whichever way you're breathing, try and time your breath so that you reach the end part of one cycle at the end of your limb movements, and then you start and finish with that nice synergy between the two. And it shouldn't be an artificially accelerated or lessened breath pattern, just your normal tidal breathing pattern, and then get that nice smooth transition between the two. Now with our basic beginner, low level, however you want to phrase it, mat work Pilates program, we are aiming to maintain that lumbo-pelvic position as we perform these movements. So just as you'd find in your one leg stretch by itself, but often as you straighten there'll be a loss of pelvic control, or as you switch legs there'll be a little lift. Once you've got that basic pattern established of the leg slide with your arm circles, think back to whether you're maintaining that beautiful neutral position throughout the lumbo-pelvic girdle, and then you'll really get the idea of that multitasking. You've got lots of things moving, but can you do that while keeping that base core frame activated, using that Pilates powerhouse? If so, that's really the primary aim of this exercise. Now we've been through that basic sequence, I'll just talk through a couple of modifications just to give you something extra to do to make this exercise a little bit more variable for you. Okay, I have again raided my little Pilates toolkit and just brought a few things. First up, we've got the little weighted balls. Now, the kind of standard sizes for Pilates come in half kilo and kilo. So we're looking at about a couple of pounds or 1 pound weights, nothing very substantial. You don't really want too much more than that if you're exercising at this level, because the moment you move weight away from the body, there's quite a magnified effect to the amount of requisite stability needed to counteract that leverage and that force. So that's why these ones are probably best. They also fit into your hands nicely and they're a little bit squidgy. So I'll show you how you can use those in just a moment. The other thing, you probably see, we've got this lovely balance cushion. This one I use in all sorts of settings, and it can modify in all sorts of ways. It's classically a standing balance pad which people would put their foot on and do stability exercise on their feet. But this particular one really fits underneath the low back, and the contour is perfect for adding some really cool dynamics to some of your mat work programs. So I'll come into that element in just a moment. But to start with, we'll use the weighted balls in really the obvious ways that they can be utilised. So from the start here, remember we're doing our arm circles and our double leg stretch early levels. So if you're just using the first level of the exercise we've just been in, the simple addition of weight into your hands gives those shoulders and chest muscles, and then also your core stabilizers, resisting that increased leverage, a little bit of extra. The other thing is it gives a really nice bit of visual feedback. And so you've got these very obvious things which you can look at and check whether they are tracking beautifully symmetrically through the air as you're doing your arm circles. If not heavy enough, of course, just increase weight. Now when it comes to the combination of upper and lower body, of course you can just use these and do your basic movement we were just doing in the video. But in terms of modifications, you can place things like weighted balls, and they could be tennis balls or small, baseballs or something underneath your feet. And there we've already got some instability, and I can feel my feet twitching around on those. But actually they're quite a nice remover of friction, at the same time increasing instability as we perform our leg slide. So we can go onto the ball as we perform that. And here we've got this really nice double challenge where the remaining leg is having to stay nice and still on the weighted ball underneath the foot, and the other one is getting this, it's getting a little bit of assistance to move smoothly, but I'm still having to make sure that as that leg moves forwards and backwards that it's not veering off course because of the weighted ball underneath it. So you can do some really nice combos with the weighted balls, but as I said, if you don't have these particular ones, you could use a roller, foam roller underneath the legs to move away. You could simply use any softball, baseball underneath, or little dumbbells in your hands. Just make sure that if you've got something solid, heavy weight, that you're not coming over your head at any point when you're holding those. Not that I want to wear one of these in the face, but because it's quite soft, you can take a hit and it won't be anywhere near as damaging as if you slipped something out of your hand like a dumbbell or a small weight. So just bear that in mind. As for the second variation I'm going to show you, as I said, I really love these things. Make sure if you've got one, you're getting on and off them, there's no pain when you go up into that little bridging position just to nest yourself on. But the cushion should sit level with your tailbone, and you should experience a really nice, comfortable, snug fit for that balance cushion. Now, if you haven't seen the other videos we've done with this in, the moment you lose control of your pelvis, that's going to tell you straight away, because you're either going to feel yourself falling off, or you're going to feel the little bubble type pressure as one side drops, the other side will inflate. So it's a really instant bit of feedback as to whether you're actually keeping that lumbo-pelvic control. And so when we bring in either our arm circles, if you extend too much and you go overhead, you're going to get that arching and barreling of the chest. So make sure that you're keeping these imaginary springs tightened between your rib cage and your belt line, so that as you go overhead, you're not allowing that cushion to move. Now, remember, you're keeping those hands in your visual field all the time, and that should prevent that overextension happening. As we move into our leg slide, the multitasking comes right back to the center, and I can feel that I'm having to work to a pretty decent level to stop that cushion moving underneath my back. Of course, if you want to start going on to more difficult techniques, but still within that semi-closed chain capacity where everything's in contact with the floor, just grab the weighted balls, the weights back in your hands, and then you can combine with the balance cushion. So there's just some little snapshots of ways you can modify the basic Pilates mat work program to really get some meaningful core stability going on. When you bring in this instability or you bring in those other aspects, there's very little hiding place. You can't really use your superficial power muscles very much when you're doing this type of exercise, and that's why it's been sculpted in this way, is to get those big power muscles out of the way, to really shift the onus onto the things which are often lacking in a lot of people. So have fun with that one. As per usual, make sure nothing is jarring or uncomfortable in your low back or pelvic girdle. And if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments.